Hello, this geometry video is on the topic of midpoint. And what we have here is a segment. And the segment has two endpoints. There's an endpoint B, which has these coordinates. And there is an endpoint A, which has these coordinates on our Cartesian plane. Now what I've done here is constructed the midpoint to always be exactly halfway from A to B. That's the definition of a midpoint. Another thing we could do if we had a midpoint like this is we could always mark this half congruent to this half. That's something that I'll do in class quite a bit. Anytime I see a midpoint, I go ahead and just mark each half congruent to the other half. But what we're interested in here is we want to calculate the coordinates of the midpoint. And I have the answer hidden. So the midpoint at this moment is 3.5, 8.5 for my x, y coordinates. And you can see that it changes as I change the length and direction of the segment AB. But let's hide this so we can do the math. All right, this formula is pretty easy. In order to find a midpoint, certainly we need to know what the coordinates of the endpoints are. So let's do it. Which values did I just circle? The x value and the x value. We want to add those together. And then we want to average them. So there are two values, we divide by 2. That gives us 2 over 2, which is 1. So for my midpoint, the x value will be 1. The y value, we want to use the same technique. Add the two y values together, 9 plus negative 6, and find the average. There are 2 of them, so we divide by 2. What does that give us? 3/2, which is 1.5, or I would probably write it as a fraction, and this is what I would prefer. We always did with these, is always leave them as improper fractions. So we have 1, 3/2, and that's exactly what the midpoint is, 1, 1.5. Let's do one more. Let's move this point A to quadrant 3, and let's move this quadrant, or point B, to right here on the x-axis. So these are the coordinates now for B and A. Remember, to find the midpoint x value, we want to add the two x values together, -8 plus 11, and adding is commutative, so it wouldn't matter if you added 11 plus -8 or -8 plus 11. You get the same thing. And then we want the average, so divide by 2. That gives us 3 over 2. So my midpoint has an x value of 1.5, or 3/2. The y value, -4 plus 0 is -4, and the average of the two we get by dividing by 2, and that gives me -2. So we have 1.5, -2. Let's check our answer, and there it is, 1.5, -2. So the formula is usually written in terms of x sub 1, y sub 1, and remember that those simply mean the x value of point 1, so we're just saying that this point A is point number 1, right? And then this would be point 2, the other endpoint, so this would be x sub 2, y sub 2. And so our formula is the sum of the two x values, x sub 1 and x sub 2, divided by how many there are, 2 of them. And then we do the same exact procedure, y sub 1 plus y sub 2, sub meaning subscript, divided by 2. There's your formula.